You know what I love about this time of year? It's the best time to make a version of one of my favorite apple cakes. It's a delicious slice of fall and great any time of day. And it's the end of the apple growing season and the beginning of the Jewish New Year, which is all about apples. Kind of like how Halloween and Thanksgiving are all about pumpkin, and Christmas is supposed to taste like, I don't know, peppermint, chestnuts, I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments what ingredient screams Christmas for you. But today, we're diving into this apple cake recipe that I made almost 10 years ago from Smitten Kitchen's website. And when I did, I made this bad boy 9 times that year. Yep, you heard me right, 9 times because it was so good. I think what drew me to the recipe was that it was her mother's apple cake recipe, and I didn't really get to share recipes that my mother had. So Deb Perelman from Smitten Kitchen, thank you. Now, I've learned a lot since making it the first 9 times, so today we're making a layered apple cake with a pecan streusel topping. And just so you know, the original recipe calls for a tube pan, but I just used my bundt pan. Don't worry if you don't have either. I'm going to share a loaf pan variation at the end, and I'll show you how to make the streusel and the maple icing if that's more your thing. Spray your pan of choice with baking spray or butter it up so it doesn't stick. Let's get started. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm gonna start by chopping 3 to 4 apples. The original recipe calls for 6 Macintosh apples, but when's the last time you saw a Macintosh apple? And they're fairly small compared to the monster apples we have now, so just pick what you like. I have my favorites after trying 19 different varieties, but consider Honeycrisp, Sugar Bee, Envy, or green apples for a nice balanced mix. For more about the 19 varieties, check out my video in the description below. Now peel the apples and chop them into 1-inch chunks. Now don't worry about being too precise or perfect. Let's do some rustic chopping here. The difference adds texture. You can aim for about 5 cups of apple chunks. Toss them into 5 tablespoons of sugar and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Totally optional, but you can add a little bit of cloves, cardamom, or nutmeg, or all 3. It's like giving your apples a sweet, spicy spa treatment before they dive into the cake. The sugar will draw out the liquid from the apples, and we'll be using that in the cake as well. In a large mixing bowl, we're combining our dry ingredients. 360 grams of AP flour, a tablespoon of baking powder, and a teaspoon of salt. Don't skip the salt. Salt helps bring out the sweetness. And now in another bowl for the wet ingredients, I'm mixing together 113 milliliters of melted butter and 115 milliliters of vegetable oil. Oil coats the flour better and gives a very moist cake that will stay that way longer. Butter just has this great flavor, whereas oil can be more neutral. I generally do an oil and butter mix to get the best of both worlds, but you can always just choose one. I'll make a note of that in the recipe below. Then I'm gonna add 60 milliliters of orange juice, 360 grams of sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 4 eggs. The orange juice might seem a little weird, but it adds a subtle brightness that really makes the cake pop. And any juice can work, like apple cider or apple juice, and if you don't have either, you can just use some milk. Now, pour the dry ingredients into the wet and fold gently, making sure to scrape the sides of the bowl. We want every bit of flour to join this party, so just don't overdo it though. Here's where it gets fun. Pour half the batter into your prepared pan. Then spread half of the cinnamon sugar apples and their juices over it. It's like we're making a cake sandwich, but only better. Now pour the rest of the batter over those apples. I'm gonna do my best to cover the apples before adding the top layer. And arrange the remaining apples on top, like a beautiful, delicious game of apple Tetris. Into the oven it goes for about 90 minutes. Now, I know, you're wondering about the streusel, but because it's in the oven for so long, I don't want to dry out and burn the streusel. So while it bakes, we can make the topping and add it in the last 20 to 25 minutes. That should give the butter enough time to melt and the sugar to caramelize. To make the streusel, add 113 grams of melted butter, 120 grams of flour, 100 grams of brown or white sugar, and 125 grams, about 1 cup of chopped up pecans. And don't forget the pinch of salt. Mix it all together. Now, if you want bigger streusel pieces, you can always consider using cold butter. Now for the maple icing, take 30 grams or 2 tablespoons of butter melted, add 105 milliliters of maple syrup and mix. Add 1 cup or 100 grams of powdered sugar and mix until smooth. If you want it to be a little thinner, just add a little milk. Keep stirring until all the lumps are out and the icing is smooth. Now you have two options for topping. If you're gonna streusel it up, at around the 65 to 70 minute mark, add the streusel. Take out the cake carefully, add it on top and put it back into the oven. And once the 90-minute mark hits, taste the cake with a skewer or cake tester. Make sure it comes out clean. Look at this beauty. It's golden brown and smells delicious. The trick here is you gotta let this cool down completely to get it out of the bundt pan. And with the streusel, I'm just gonna use 2 plates to flip this over, and I'm just glad all of it stayed on top. But maybe I should get a 2-piece tube pan if I'm gonna be streuseling it up on the regular. You know, next time someone tells you what a dessert needs, just tell them to streusel it up. You know, there's something really special about making a cake with apples for the new year, especially when it's connected to a family recipe. It's not about the flavors, it's about tradition and sharing something delicious with the people you love. Jewish or not, this is a great cake to make for dinner parties and weekend guests. Here's what you can do if you have a couple of loaf pans handy and no tube pan. The only adjustment you need to make is mixing up the apples in with the batter and bake at 350, the same temperature, for about 50 to 60 minutes. You can add streusel if you want, just do it at the end with the last 25 minutes. The reason you want to mix it up and not layer it is structure. Tube pans can hold it together, but loaf pans, it wouldn't work, which is why we mix it up. So there you go. Enjoy. Thanks for watching, and Happy New Year to all my friends and family.